Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of our weekly racing updates. As you see, I've got my Calibre biometric app. Now they did update the app, so it's going to look a lot different. The most important update that they added was the ability to add a heart rate monitor. And so as you see there, I'm just going through the recommended steps they have for pairing the device as well as getting it calibrated and ready to go. And once it gets paired and connected, it gives you the option to calibrate. Now, I would recommend calibrating every single time you use it if you do have one, which is what I do, because I want to make sure that it is always ready to go. Now, again, as part of their new setup, the instructions walk you through how to put it on, what it should feel like, and whatnot. Obviously, having done this before, I'm not ultra, concerned of making sure that it is, that I'm reading through the actual instructions. As you see me just kind of getting it on my head right there, getting my headband on, my little sweat rag, just so that way I can avoid getting some sweat in my face. Now, again, putting on, pairing my heart rate monitor. So if you have a Polar H10, unfortunately, they're limited to just the Polar products right now. But if you have a Polar H10, what I would recommend is connecting, when you connect your heart rate monitor in the Polar app, as you see there, it gives you an option to enable two Bluetooth devices. Now, I didn't have that enabled before. It took me a little bit to get it set up. But ultimately I got it set up that way. And so that gave me the option to add it to the Calibre app as well as to Zwift. Now I use my heart rate monitor directly on Zwift, not going through my trainer. I could set it up that way, but that's just how I have it set up right now. I don't really see a difference. And so that's ultimately a personal preference. But as you can see here, got everything paired up and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and jump forward to when the action starts. Now, as you can see, as Zwift loads and Watopia gets going, I've had my mask on for about a minute or so. You can see at the bottom right, my fat burn percentage is about 95%. Now I'm constantly in and out of ketosis. Now lately I have been purposefully trying to keep myself out of ketosis in order to basically set myself up so that way I can run through a series of nutrition and weight loss videos. And so I wanted to initiate that by, testing a race out with my mask on. So you can get an idea for, what fuel usage you use while you're racing. Now, I know I've demoed this before, but with the new app update, it does look a little bit cleaner. And the fact that you can integrate your heart rate into it is kind of nice. Now, the unfortunate thing is they removed the export feature. So you don't really get a chance to export the data and, do what you need to do with it. So everything right now is just inbuilt in the app. Hopefully they add that feature down the road, because it would be nice to be able to export the data and then add it into better graphs and whatnot. So as you can see right now, minimal calorie usage, averaging about 6 calories or so, per minute. I believe the rate is set up for, per minute. So 5-6 calories per minute, not that big a deal, especially considering I'm only doing about, I'm in my zone 2 range, even though my heart rate's in the, low 100s. As I start to, continue going with the pace bot, you'll see I'll kind of settle into that, upper zone 1, low zone 2 range. And, really this is just me kind of establishing a baseline. I'm I know what to expect out of my own performance. And so I'm just kind of making sure that, the numbers look like what I would expect. And as you can see with the graph, the Calibre sensor is exceptionally sensitive. And so if your breathing stops for a moment, if you exhale more than you inhale, because it does calculate the volume, the minute volume, which is up in the top right of that, of those boxes. It it gives you enough to where you understand, as well as the respiratory rate. It gives you enough to understand what's going on in your body at that moment. But the numbers that I'm constantly looking out for is the my fat burn percentage, which again is still in the 80s right now, and my respiratory exchange ratio. The respiratory exchange ratio is what determines the carbohydrate and fat utilization. Now, even though my focus is getting into ketosis, and I'll be talking about that in a later video, because I want to break down my exact kind of path that I'm gonna set myself on here in the next couple months. But even though I focus on getting into ketosis, you don't have to be in ketosis in order to burn fat. Your body creates and utilizes triglycerides all the time. And so that's kind of what you're seeing when someone who's not in ketosis, that's kind of what you're seeing in the fat burn percentage. It's you're using triglycerides. You're not really if you were to chart out a graph of what energy expenditure looks like, you would see an overlap between the fat utilization, carbohydrate utilization, and lactase utilization. Now, lactose, sorry, is basically the anaerobic fuel that your body uses, as you start getting to harder efforts. Typically, people talk about sprint efforts when it comes to lactate. Now, you can get into lactate utilization well before that, but that's, for another conversation. So, again, I'm just looking to kind of track the numbers here. As I'm jumping ahead, you can see just looking at different numbers here. So right now, again, still on the calorie burn screen, where you can see the calories, respiratory exchange, fat burn, and fat burn rate. And then switching over to the breath count, you can see, again, you can still see the calories, but also the total volume, the respiratory exchange ratio. And then now in the respiration rate, you see all the different volumes: inhale, exhale, inhaled or exhaled CO2 and exhaled O2. Now going to the minute volume, again, this is stuff that if you know what you're looking at, then these numbers will make sense. I am still learning a lot of these numbers. And as I go, the main focus that I'm looking at for me is the fat burn and respiratory exchange ratio, because the respiratory exchange ratio is what determines your fat percentage, your fat versus carbohydrate utilization ratio, as well as your calorie expenditure. And so the goal with this is to understand, as I race, especially with the focus of being low carb as possible, and maintaining performance and improving performance. The goal with this is to understand, while I'm racing, at what level of performance do I need to focus my fueling strategy? When do I need to add carbs into my races? When can I leave them out? Typically, I don't add much in terms of carbohydrates into racing, generally less than 10 grams, and that's because my couple different supplements that I use have carbohydrates in it, and so I can't really avoid it, unless I skip the supplements, and that's a whole different story. So at this point, it's just looking at what my energy expenditure is while I'm racing. And so let's take a look at that. And so as I jump into the pen, you see that my heart rate's coming down right now at 115, and still kind of working its way down. I'm not doing a lot of wattage, 50-ish watts, just to kind of keep the legs spinning. And you see my fat burn percentage is slowly starting to climb. It's at 50, it was at 55, 60%. Now it's kind of, hovering in that area. And little by little, it does start to climb back up. And ultimately, it's because my body is no longer needing to burn carbohydrates in order to, fuel my effort. It's starting to make its way back. And that's why I said before that the Calibre is exceptionally sensitive when it comes to detecting this, and really gives you a good in the moment picture of what's going on with your body. And, I think that's for someone who wants to get the most out of their effort, but at the same time, not go overboard. Because obviously, you're seeing stories starting to circulate now from professional athletes, whether it's triathletes or, regular cyclists, that are talking about how the excessive carbohydrate consumption is starting to affect their overall health. Um, and that is, if you look at, what's going on with Lionel Sanders, that is something that for me, I want to minimize, if not avoid altogether. I want to be able to, you know, utilize carbohydrates for performance and kind of treat it like a supplement more so than you know, than an overall macronutrient for, for energy. And so, as you can see, again, my fat burn percentage is coming up to almost, 75, 80%, kind of hovering in that area. And so before we get the race started, you'll kind of see that. And that's, this is what happens when you're cooling down. Your body starts to switch fuel, fuel sources. And again, this is where planning your nutrition strategy for you, for your performance, will ultimately help you determine what's needed and what's not needed. So I'm going to again jump forward to the race action so you can see, how this goes while I'm racing. Now, as we get out the gate here, reasonable start. Nothing, nothing terrible. It's still, we're still doing mid 300s, and you'll see my calorie consumption start to quickly climb as the pace picks up and as the caliber starts to recognize my effort level has changed. And you see right now I'm burning about 9.5, 10 calories. And again, it's slowly starting to climb and will, continue to climb, as my heart rate goes up, as my effort picks up. Even though, I might not be doing as much wattage as I did when I started the race, I'm still putting out more effort. My heart rate still went up because of the effort that we did as we left the pen. And so you'll see my average calorie consumption right now is hovering in the 15s. Now it does kind of jump back and forth between like 10 and 15 throughout the race. And that, again, that's a good way to kind of look at when it comes to the macronutrients that you want to carry with you while you're exercising, over the course of an hour or over the course of half an hour, whatever the time frame is. What do you want to bring with you? What do you want to have? What do you want to carry on with you? What's going to make the most sense? What's going to, you know, what's going to be necessary if you're not doing hard efforts? Do you really want to have, a bunch of gels with you? Do you really want to have, a lot of unnecessary fuel carrying with you? And so this is for me, this was a great view into how my body's performing while I'm racing. And so jumping way forward as we get to Box Hill, you can see my calorie consumption stayed pretty steady between 10 and 15 calories per minute. Dropped down a little bit as the pace started, easing up before Box Hill. But as we start to hit the climb, you see my heart rate start to go back up, my efforts start to go back up. And, as previously mentioned, you'll see my calorie expenditure go up. And again, you see my, on the lower right, you'll see my fat burn percentage down at 0 because I am at, zone wise at 3.2 ish watts per kilogram. I'm pushing zone 4, zone 4, zone 5 effort, or maybe zone 5, zone 6 effort. And so, hovering in those upper level performance and just giving it all I've got, getting up Box Hill. Now, I don't think I hit a PR on this one, if I remember correctly, But I still did pretty good in terms of how I felt. I am on my SL8 with the disc wheels because I prioritized the flat part of the stage to kind of help save some energy for the climb. Obviously, I needed to output more energy on the climb because of being on the disc, but I prefer that trade off. And so, as you can see, my calorie expenditure is going up into the 20 calories per minute and kind of hovering, in the 15 to 20 range as I climb Box Hill. And, at the end, I'll show you, what the carb consumption look like. But just know that these are the moments where, where carbohydrates matter, where carbohydrates will help you out, as a performance enhancing supplement. Yes, it will help you in the, when you're not outputting a lot of energy, but ultimately, if you don't want to go overboard with carbohydrate consumption, this is kind of how you should be looking at your efforts. So I jumped in front of this person in order to kind of help put them in the draft. Because I knew, we were all suffering at this point. And so I figured, why not? I passed him, might as well, give him a little extra help. And then I, put on the rockets and, just did what I do is go as hard as I can up this hill. Because again, as someone who's primarily a sprinter, this is a good opportunity for me to kind of, get a hard effort in, get that sprint effort in, going up this hill. And then as you can see, kind of stalling out a little bit as I got to the top, because at this point, you see my heart rate's in the 170s, but I am definitely feeling it. My quads are feeling it. And so I knew that I needed to, get a little bit of, ease a little bit on the effort. I was already behind. I didn't expect to catch up to the group because they already, at this point, they already had probably a minute plus on me. And so for me, this part of the race was just getting to the line. I wasn't worried about trying to catch up. I wasn't worried about trying to set a PR, set a course record or anything. Just trying to get to the line at this point. So, getting back to the graph, the one thing that I don't have an answer for yet, but I know it's visible, is the green versus red line. From my understanding, or from what I'm looking at, is for me is the red line. I don't quite know what the green line is for, but as you can see, as I'm going downhill, my fat burn percentage is starting to come up again. Again, like I mentioned before, when you're not outputting a hard effort, when you're kind of at rest, your body will start burning more fat. It will start utilizing triglycerides in order to fuel whatever functions necessary. You see me fiddling with the controllers because my left controller was getting stuck and kind of kept pulling me to the left, and it basically left me like I was grinding against a wall. And so I was fighting with it, trying to figure it out, but I wasn't able to get it working. So there we go. It stays stuck to the left. And so as I roll down the hill and get to the bottom, you can see my calorie burn rate is coming down. My fat utilization is coming up. My respiratory exchange ratio is starting to, come down a bit, which again, anything above, like, I think it's 0.7 to 0.8 is where you start crossing over into into burning more carbohydrates than fats. Anything below 0.7, if I remember correctly, is just pure fat utilization. And so I will do this again once I get myself into a steady ketosis, so you can see the difference in the numbers, if anything. Now, generally, when it comes to that, ketosis does kind of throw the numbers off a little bit. And I'll have to look up the Peter Attia and Inigo Samilan conversation about that to kind of to talk a little bit more in depth about it, but I'll reference that when that comes up. And so here we go, heading into the escalator, which is quite possibly the, this is like the if we were racing in a pack, this is where the pack generally starts to split up if it hadn't split up already. because this is a short, hard, steep climb. And, again, for someone like me as a sprinter, this is my, this is my moment to kind of get as hard of an effort in order to, kind of break loose, because it is short, hard, punchy. But as you can see, my, the Calibre mask is picking up the extra energy consumption and energy utilization, and it is reflecting that on the graph. And I can tell you that at this point, especially, in the 170s, my heart rate in the 170s, it was becoming increasingly hard to breathe in that mask. Now, the way the mask is set up, it does have holes on the side as well as holes in the front in order to give your body the ability to breathe better, breathe more naturally. It does cover your nose, but doesn't like block your nose. So you can breathe through your nose or through your mouth, however you want. The idea behind it is it creates enough air pressure to then push air into the sensor. And so any remaining, any pressure above what it needs to get the air into the sensor, it basically exhausts it out these vent holes. But it's like breathing. The best way I can describe it is it's like breathing through a snorkel if you're underwater. And so it's it's a small enough tube to where if you're not used to it, it's gonna feel like someone's on your chest. And again, racing with this on, super, super hard, super hard. And so as I come up to the finish here with 800 meters to go, I am, like I said before, I'm pressing against the wall because my left paddle, just for whatever reason, was stuck. I still have this one rider ahead of me. But at this point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to sprint, even if it's not for first place, just so that way I can say that I still fought all the way till the very end. And so even though the rider's about a second ahead of me, I know that I can bridge that gap with a decent sprint. I can bridge that gap. So I was waiting for as long as I can to launch a sprint. I didn't see their power coming up, so I didn't expect them to sprint. And I knew that if I decided to, I would be able to overtake them and just get going. I figured they were going to follow me on the sprint. But as you see, I start to light up my sprint. My numbers start to get into the orange, but that person just let it be. They stayed at 2 watts per kilogram. And when I recognized that they weren't following or they weren't, chasing the sprint, I just kind of eased off the power a bit, but ultimately still wanted to make sure that, I got through the stage with the best time possible. And so here we go, looking at the different numbers now that I've finished the event. You can see my fat burn utilization is going up and going up quickly because I'm not moving. I'm, basically my heart rate's coming down. And so my body's adjusting what fuel sources it needs. So I'm starting to click through the different numbers, looking at the respiratory exchange ratio and the respiratory rates, as well as, my exhaled carbon dioxide, exhaled oxygen numbers. But ultimately, right now, I'm just kind of, searching for what my carbohydrate utilization was. And so they moved that from where it used to be. It used to be in the calorie burn rate, but they moved that to a different part of the app. And so that's kind of, as I'm scrolling through, just looking at the different numbers here. And again, if you know what these numbers mean, then you'll understand what you're looking at. At this point, for me, I am just looking at numbers. And so, yeah, as I get to, so looking at the VO2, I did calculate my VO2 max. Did take me a little bit to figure it out, but my VO2 max for this effort was about 47, which for my age is pretty decent. It's definitely above average. The average for someone in their 40s is about 40. And so I was happy about that, looking at the VO2 max. Now the app itself doesn't show you the VO2 max, but it does show you your peak VO2, and then you can use that to calculate the VO2 max. And so again, looking at total calorie consumption, just under 600 calories overall for this session, not just this race, but this session. and just again clicking through, trying to figure out where my where my carbohydrate consumption was. And so that, again, once I ended the session and then went back into basically the completed session, then I was able to look at where everything was at properly. And so right now, looking at the respiratory exchange rate, you see the average exhaled O2, average exhale CO2, which again, that's used to calculate the respiratory exchange ratio. Now going into the average tidal volume, for whatever reason, the carbohydrate consumption is there. And so you see the total carb burn is 676 kilocalories. Now, that is a pretty high number considering. Now, why that's different from the total calories, I might have to double check that. But in an effort like this, so looking at, again, I'm just kind of clicking through different, the different numbers, just to kind of, again, for visual purposes for me, getting familiar with the numbers. But when it comes to total carbohydrate consumption, 686 calories is a pretty good amount. That averages out to about 100 and, if I remember correctly, it was about 110 or so grams, 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So this is almost an hour's worth of effort. Again, I'm, including my warm up prior to the race as well as the race itself. Obviously, most of the carbohydrate consumption was during the race, but if you look at it overall, it's about 120-ish grams of carbohydrates per hour. Now, that kind of falls in line with what a lot of mainstream, science is kind of pushing for professional athletes in order to maintain their performance. And again, my focus right now is what can I, how much can I include without needing to go overboard, without needing to go into that, 120 calories per, or 120 grams per hour in order to maintain an effort. So that's kind of what I will be playing with as I go into the future with my Calibre biometric mask and Zwift racing. So hope you enjoyed that, and I will catch you guys on the next race.
Hey guys, it's Miguel from that thing you just watched. Hope you enjoyed that video, whether it was topic on nutrition or racing or a combination of both. Feel free to come back. I will continue to put out videos like this and continue to showcase what you can do with smart nutritional strategies, combining that with racing, because that is what this channel is all about. And feel free to check in if you want to see more racing. Click on wherever the link's at, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next race.